Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelsey Heindel, and I'm a program coordinator in the MCW Office of Community Engagement. And welcome to our January edition of our monthly series, the Community Engagement Spotlight. Please note that this session is being recorded. I'd first like to begin with a statement from the Office of Community Engagement. We wish to acknowledge the Indigenous people who are past and present stewards of the land on which we pursue our just cause of a healthy community for everyone. To our audience members, please be sure you are muted throughout the presentation, but feel free to unmute during the Q&A portion to ask any questions. But we also encourage you to use the chat bar freely to share comments, questions for our guest. We will be monitoring those throughout the session, so feel free to send any as they come to you. Please look for information about our upcoming guests on our CE website. You can find our series webpage by Googling MCW CE Spotlight. This monthly series features community partners and the important work they are doing for and with the community. We highlight their goals, motivations, and accomplishments and the ways they have partnered with people and programs at MCW. Today, we are deeply honored to have Brian Bautista as our featured guest. We also want to thank Greg Wesley, our facilitator for today's session. At this time, I would like to introduce our Acting Senior Associate Dean for Community Engagement, Dr. Stacy Young, who will say a few words about Brian and the important work of Versiti. Dr. Young.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. Mr. Brian Bautista is the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for Blood Operations at Versiti Incorporated and has been in this role since 2018. Versiti is a national leader in innovative blood health solutions with the mission to improve patient outcomes, advance the field of personalized medicine, and strengthen the health of communities everywhere. Brian brings diverse leadership and problem-solving skills to the blood industry with extensive experience leading teams and applying strategic thinking across operations, marketing, sales, and corporate strategy. He also brings a clinical background and has dedicated his over 20-year career to healthcare with a focus on serving patients, providers, and the individuals he leads. Prior to Versiti, Brian led an institution-based plasma franchise through significant internal culture changes and navigating the dynamic healthcare landscape. Throughout his career, Brian has demonstrated a track record of high achievement and delivering results by building high-performing teams and inspiring leaders. During his time at Versiti, Brian has focused on building new capabilities for the operation with a focus on service excellence, learning and development, and change management. Thank you, Brian, for being our featured spotlight guest today. I would now like to introduce today's facilitator, Mr. Greg Wesley. Greg is the Senior Vice President of Strategic Alliances and Business Development at the Medical College of Wisconsin. He has been a key leader at MCW for the Thrive On collaboration, which includes the Greater Milwaukee Foundation and Royal Capital Group as partners. He also co-chairs the Health Equity Academic Committee. Greg currently serves on the board of directors for MHS Health Wisconsin, Milwaukee World Festival, the Greater Milwaukee Committee, the YMCA of Metropolitan Milwaukee, Teach for America Milwaukee, and Versiti Incorporated. He is a trustee of the Greater Milwaukee Foundation and the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Milwaukee and serves as a Milwaukee County Supplemental Court Commissioner. Recently, Greg was the recipient of the 2022 Business Champion Award from the African American Chamber of Commerce of Wisconsin. We are so pleased to have him with us today. Greg, thank you for serving as our facilitator, and I turn it over now to you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Young. Stacy, really an honor to be here with you and your team. I want to make sure I acknowledge everyone that has worked at bringing this engagement spotlight to the forefront of MCW and the community. So thank you for that. Really honored to also be here and speak with Brian Bautista from Versiti, and I'm going to jump kind of right into it. So Brian, would you maybe share a little bit of your background, who you are, and kind of, I know that Stacy gave your bio, but I'm sure there's some more cool nuggets that you would like to share with us. Would you give us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Young, for having me, and to everyone for carving their evening out here to spend a little bit of time to hear about how we are really impacting the community and the communities that need us the most. I would tell you, I've spent a career in healthcare doing a lot of different things, as you heard, but I don't think anything gets you ready to be part of the healthcare system that the blood industry is, that gets to play with all the different health systems, but has such a constrained supply of something that the community needs the most. And what you'll hear from us today is the different ways that blood products are an example of a healthcare disparity that we have right in our own backyard. And so whether it was things like the rare disease space, which I worked in quite a bit in the biotech and pharma side, those plasma-derived therapies, you have a lot of rare disease patients that don't have a voice. Well, when I started here at Versiti, and many of you are familiar with our service line that is the blood operations, you've seen our blood drives, maybe even are an active blood donor today, we uncover that there are the voiceless out there. There are communities that need us the most. And something I loved in one of the statements that opened this session is delivering healthcare to everyone that needs it in the community. And that's something that we're focusing on, and excited to be partnering with you, Greg, MCW, and the Thrive On folks, which I know we'll get into. But as for the important baseball card stats, a proud father of 3, a husband to 1, and you know, the day job and the mission really have integrated into our family, as well as we all know when you get into the blood business, more people than you thought have been impacted by this that you didn't before. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So and thanks for that those little baseball card nuggets there. It's always good to bring some additional aspects to the table. So thank you for doing that. Was there any kind of pivotal moment that led you to do the work that you're doing now? I know you said your background talked about some other industries, but how did you make the pivot over to the side where Versiti is really driving impact from a blood operation standpoint and otherwise?
Yeah, I'd say over the last decade, the blood industry has kind of pivoted into this kind of traditional nonprofit space that was pretty transactional. Between myself and a handful of other leaders that were introduced to this business, and quite frankly, introduced to a mission, a life-saving mission, there was a big need that patients weren't being served as well as they should be. And Versiti, being the largest independent blood center in the Midwest, and for those that are local here in Milwaukee, we serve the entire Southeast Wisconsin area and all the hospitals, thought there could be some real change and reform in this space with how we advance the science, take better care of our donors, and ultimately lead to the right product to the right patient at the right time, which hadn't always been happening, didn't always have the resources. And kind of found my way. The mission found me, Greg. Happy to be here and to be working with partners like yourselves that are so aligned with our mission.
Thanks for that. So Brian, I know that Versiti has some really unique partnerships with MCW. What's it like to be a partner with us? And obviously that's a broad question, so you can pick the areas of focus. It could be obviously with the Thrive On collaboration or other aspects of partnerships. But what's it like to be a partner with MCW?
Oh, I'll tell you, I'll start with kind of the blocking and tackling of the day job, which is provision of ample blood supply to our hospital systems. One of our key partners, we're in a unique position in the healthcare system that we get to be health system agnostic, in the sense that we're right on the campus with MCW, right, or Children's. We have a research institute over there. And, when it comes to all of these different partnerships, they're just that. It's not while some could say, well, isn't the Versitis and blood centers of the world a vendor? If they're doing it right, they're more than a vendor. They're a partner in patient care. And we really, and Versiti takes it to another level, that we're partnering research too and advancing the science. So I've seen great partnership as it relates to being stewards of the blood supply and making sure that, again, the right patient is getting the right product at the right time. We provide expertise back and forth with how we're managing blood, how we're managing patients, etc. The partnership that I'm most excited about, Greg, you alluded to, is the initiative that MCW is spearheading along with Royal Capital and the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, is the Thrive On campus. And Versiti just last May was officially announced as one of the health partners to be one of the ground floor tenants in that campus. And that's something that I think while we're both learning, or we're all learning, I think there's been a great collaboration that, number one, we both know we're building this plane as we fly it, because there isn't necessarily a blueprint that exists that we can go plug and play. We've been partners in listening to the community, and the MCW team specifically, along with the partners at throughout Thrive On, have been very gracious in accelerating our learning and the listening. I think we're all really active in the listening of what that community needs, assessing those needs, and really being thoughtful and intentional on the provision of services in our case, health and social services that are gonna meet the mark. And so I've really appreciated that partnership.
So I think, in addition to that, within the Thrive On collaboration, as Versiti became a partner, the idea of Project Dream from Versiti has kind of started to evolve. Why don't you share with the community what Project Dream is and what Versiti hopes it will bring to not only the partnership, but also the community?
Yeah, so we're in a unique position as we sit as the blood provider for hospitals and specific programs, specifically in Milwaukee. Sickle cell disease, the care of patients for sickle cell disease is seen as a center of excellence. Milwaukee has a great connection to its patients that are sickle cell patients and give great care. The only treatment outside of the stem cell transplant is the provision of specific units of blood called RO blood. It's a specific antigen descriptor. Many on this call could describe that better than me, but a specific blood that sickle cell patients require. And we are the sole provider of that for the different programs and patients throughout the health systems here in Southeast Wisconsin, specifically in Milwaukee. The burning platform for all of us who are dedicated to those patients and those communities that those patients live in is that it might not be sustainable because of blood donation trends nationally. The cause of choice isn't always blood donation, maybe how it was a decade or two ago. Cause of choice might not be blood donation. It might be something that's as easy as getting on someone's phone and getting on a GoFundMe, and that's all of a 30-second good deed that I can do versus spending that hour donating blood. All that to be said that there's a risk here that the sustainable, ample blood supply for sickle cell patients is something that needs to be looked at. And where we looked at where we can grow more of those donations, we found that we didn't need to look any further than our own backyard. And Jai, I don't know if you have some of those slides we discussed, but you could look at the sickle cell patients that live in our Milwaukee neighborhoods by zip code. There's a slide there, Jai, if you can pull that one up. It'll show you the need for blood in those zip codes. And if you assume a pretty conservative assumption is that a sickle cell patient needs about 100 units of blood every year. And just a little frame of reference, if you or I go in to get a procedure, we probably need about a unit or two for some sort of procedure or some sort of therapy. A sickle cell patient needs 100 units on average a year. But when you look at the zip codes on the blood we collect there, not only is the overall blood collection low, but the specific blood for sickle cell patients is really low. So all that to be said is, wouldn't it be great if we could establish a way to look at this disparity between the blood needed for these patients and what's available to them in their neighborhood? How could we close that gap? And the idea came about as the stars aligned that there would be, a space in the Thrive On campus that we could set up not just a blood donation center, because all of the listening we've done says that just opening up a blood donation center isn't going to establish trust, help people understand the need for blood donation, where that blood goes. And so the opportunity here for us in partnering with the Thrive On collaboration is, while the primary goal would be to make sure we have a sustainable blood supply for our own backyard, for our own neighbors, family, and friends, we would also be a resource center. And if this sounds a little foreign to any of you of what's a blood center doing, opening up a resource center, know that it's first of its kind. So the blood industry typically doesn't invest in these types of initiatives. What we would try and do, and Jai, maybe you can go to the next slide here. While that primary goal of sustaining that blood supply is the objective, we know the sequence matters, that we want to provide education, health literacy to the community, hiring and job preparedness and job training, and a health and social service resource to folks. And we can get into some of these details, but if you think of the different pillars, the education around blood 101, blood donation 101, organ donation 101, sickle cell information, sickle cell support groups, and health literacy. Those are the type of education events we will be hosting at Thrive On. We are always looking for folks that are looking to start their healthcare or continue their healthcare careers by providing hiring opportunities. And those are jobs that range from our entry-level phlebotomist roles all the way to professional and executive leadership roles within our corporate services, human resources, informational systems, IS teams, finance, and all of our technical service lines. So the hiring, training, we're going to do all of our training right there on campus, which I know we've talked about, Greg, that we're really excited that people are going to see the hands-on training. It's almost going to look like a trade school. And then the last piece that really came about when we listened through Thrive On's community engagement team, our community advisory board that we've put together, is that it might be easy for me to go see my specialist for sickle cell disease, because I can actually get a ride to go see someone like Dr. Josh Field, who sees a big adult clinic there. But Josh Field would tell me when they come and see me for their sickle cell specialty care, they're asking for access to a primary care doc, OB/GYN services, vision and dental services for their children. And I don't live near that campus. I get transportation to the campus where I can see my specialist, but where I live is a healthcare desert, or there's underlying challenges that prevent me from getting healthcare. So what we're proposing is a community health worker that would be on site, a health navigator, if you will, that would work with folks in the community that are in need of health and social services. So a long way of saying we're going to do a lot of comprehensive things there, Greg, and really excited to be part of that team and that movement on campus.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really comprehensive explanation. And I would imagine that as you have shared that in your listening sessions or other opportunities to provide feedback, you've had to learn a few lessons about effective partnering. Any ideas that or nuggets that you could share with us about ways to be an effective partner with community, particularly given the comprehensive description you just gave? I would imagine you've learned a thing or two.
Yeah, so you could probably get, health assessment that you can get health assessment needs data from the county, from the state, by zip code, etc. If you dig enough on the Google machine and know some folks, you can get data, and it's really important. You probably can't listen enough, is what I would say. That's the big insight. And listening to folks in the community, listening to leaders in the community, really understanding. So here's a perfect example, Greg, of some of the insight that we wouldn't have known if we didn't do the extra listening and the real, what I call immersion. You identify people have, as we all know, either access issues to their healthcare or a mistrust of the healthcare system. I don't think that's a secret to anyone. But if you don't ask why enough, or if you don't dig down into the layers, you won't know that while it would be great for me to keep my appointments for my physicals and bring my kids to their appointments, that the underlying piece that makes it hard is I have a tough time holding down a job. I have maybe some security issues, or I'm just worried about getting them fed before I'm worried about getting them to see a doc. And so the insight that we heard was the health services is one thing. There is sequence matters, that if there might be an underlying social service that I might need that's going to enable me to utilize that health service. And so that's just an example of some of the insight that comes out. And quite honestly, a lot of it is, if we don't know who Versiti is, we're not going to trust you. And hopefully there's someone there that's going to endorse exactly what we stand for, and is being part of this Thrive On. I think that gives us a little bit of a head start with that endorsement.
So you just talked about trust, and that's not surprising. Are there specific actions besides listening that you've been taking to establish and build trust?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been doing, especially with the listening teams, is making sure we're keeping promises back to, here's what we've heard, and we're coming back with either kind of report outs on what we've done with the information, progress we're making, and even if we have made decisions, say no, we're not going to go there. We're sharing the why. Sometimes it's just not a core competency. Of the 10 needs that are out there, we probably can't fulfill all 10, as an example, right? But we're going to provide the why, and where we think the handful of things we're going to do really well. Some of the other goals for 2023, because as we anticipate doors opening at Thrive On in 2024, we'd like to partner with the anchor organizations that surround the campus, the G's Clippers of the world, the Boys and Girls Club of the world. That community has trusted anchor organizations that we can host hiring events. We can host education events. If we can get our health navigator on board quick enough, we'd love for them to start seeing members of the community that are in need and maybe host it at these partner organizations. But the one thing that we have heard, Greg, is we've got to lead with that before. Hopefully you've noticed I haven't even said anything about blood drives and blood donation, because while that's the primary goal, we know sequence matters. It's got to be a ready, aim, fire, right? It can't, and that blood donation piece, the outcome of that has to come secondary in terms of how we partner with the community first.
So it sounds like you're on a journey to really establish and build relationships through the power of others. Any suggestions you might have for ways that folks within MCW and others that may be joining might be able to assist and help?
Well, you know, in many circles where I have the opportunity to speak about this initiative, and by the way, we're speaking in front of the entire industry in Washington, D.C., because people are noticing, they're getting wind of this, so it's really exciting. But almost in every presentation, someone cites that they know someone or know someone who knows someone. And so these anchor organizations that surround the Thrive on campus on the north side, if anyone has an idea or a really strong connection to one of them that you think there's a intersection in this Venn diagram of an organization that's looking to do some outreach in that community, maybe it's a place of worship where their congregation or schools where their families are in need of health and social services, are in need of employment opportunities. The education around health is a priority for them. If anyone has leads to that, would like to get more involved, I'm all ears. And to your point, Greg, that you made earlier, that insight that we've got to really establish that trust through partners that are already trusted in the community. And believe me, we're going to do everything we can to earn that trust, so that we can, by continuing to listen and continuing to keep our promises.
So along those lines, you're looking for partnerships with community, and I would say those are partnerships that would that have a mutual benefit, but maybe some who don't have as much of a relationship with Versiti might see that as benefiting Versiti more directly, even though that may not be the case. But I can see if you haven't established that trust, some thinking that way. But we know hiring and employment are also big deals. And you talked about wanting to improve employment opportunities for people in the community. Can you go a little bit deeper there and talk about what Versiti might have available? I heard you say, you know, from entry level all the way up, but I think some more color there would be beneficial to relationship building. So talk about that a little bit, Brian.
Yeah, so I'll start with kind of our approach to hiring. We're proud members of folks that have signed up for that Milwaukee Pledge, where diversity and inclusion in diverse hiring and promotion from frontline all the way to leadership roles is a priority for us. So we're on that journey to increase that, and that's everything from our frontline all the way to our board. And those diverse perspectives is something that is a foundation of how we've operated, which starts all the way at the top. Our CEO, Chris Miskell, has made that one of our top 5 priorities in everything that we're doing. So I'd be remiss if I didn't start there. That's something we're walking the walk and talking the talk, right? I think that's something that just is part of the fabric of Versiti now. As it relates to opportunities, it's probably no secret that you've noticed the entire world is short-staffed, whether you visit your favorite restaurant or go to a store, or anyone that still shops at stores, but any retail setting, all the way to different service providers. And so we do have opportunities, and we've pivoted and shifted to make sure as we are showing up, especially in the communities we're already serving as our blood provider, the opportunities that we have are for careers more than just jobs, because I think anyone right now can kind of show up and say they've got jobs. That's not unique. What makes, I think, Versiti really special is it's a place where we're actually asking, if you're looking for a job, this isn't it. If you're looking for a career, we'll take a high school grad all the way to someone continuing their professional career. And I'll give you an example, Greg. We've just partnered with the Boys and Girls Club locally, that students that are 16 or older, that are not yet graduated to high school, we've opened up a role where they become an assistant donor services specialist, basically an assistant phlebotomist. And we're also taking folks that are graduating right out of Milwaukee Public Schools and starting a career where they're learning healthcare and how to take care of donors and patients, and support that with internships, a tuition reimbursement, and so that it becomes a place that they've started their career and hopefully continue on. So when we talk about different roles, specifically in blood operations here in Milwaukee, we at almost any given time have roles open for phlebotomists, and we do all of the training. This is training that a lot of people go to a trade school for. I think I can probably say we are technically as sound as any trade school, and quite frankly, a lot of folks come to us for the training for that reason, as it relates to phlebotomy. We do have, production labs as well. Lab sciences, medical technicians, folks that have those types of degrees, we have those opportunities as well. And then, like I said, with finance, human resources, IT, plenty of opportunities there. And those stem, like I said, from our leadership roles, all the way to internships for college or even grad students. So it's a wide array, given that Versiti's headquarters are right here in Milwaukee. As you saw in the picture, we serve the entire Midwest, but our headquarters are right here in Milwaukee, which lend itself to a lot more professional opportunities in addition to those entry-level phlebotomy roles.
That's great. So I've heard of like three pillars. I've heard education, I've heard employment, I've heard research. On the research side, if you're talking to community, and it's been my experience that when you talk to community, words of research come up, and unless people really understand what that means, you might lose the trust aspects that you're trying to build. Have you had that encounter at all? And if so, what are you doing to be very mindful of how research might be viewed, particularly in communities that are that haven't had as much from an investment standpoint and are looking to close the gap around disparities, looking to close the gap, whether it's in the health space or the economic space? Talk to me about that a little bit, Brian.
Yeah, so I don't get to hear it as much because I'm not smart enough to be one of the researchers that work at BRI. But to the extent that there is some of that mistrust that exists, we're not blind to it by any means. When we're talking about bleeding disorder research, sickle cell research, some either skepticism or at least questions come to mind. No doubt. I think our organization that has led with kind of our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts internally, and now the outreach, speak to our thoughtfulness and awareness that reach our entire beacon, which is what we talk about when we talk about Versiti. We're this beacon of hope, and that we carry that responsibility very seriously. I think it also speaks to the makeup of our organization. I do know our diversity pledge spans beyond just corporate services and what we do in operations. It does go to our science organization and research organization as well, that folks that are going to be part of studies, folks that are going to be people we partner with, that we're reflecting our makeup reflects our customer base as well. And so there's been a high bar that is set in terms of everything that we do from an ethics and compliance perspective. And we have the IRB kind of governance to be sure that everything is well forward.
So let's maybe pick up on that just a little bit. If you're looking, you said lots of people are excited about the opportunity. How long will Versiti be in this in this community? How long did it sign up to be a partner with the Thrive on Collaboration? Is this a long-term commitment? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, we're excited that we have no plans on vacating that space. We've signed up for a 10-year commitment. I think there's probably the goal is that our presence in this community is there to stay. Just to give folks a frame of reference, we just celebrated our 75th year anniversary. I will tell you, of all the things that Dr. Young listed, things I've done in my career, they will all pale in comparison to establishing this donor and resource center on the north side of Milwaukee. It will absolutely be the crown jewel in anything that I've been part of. And the team is just as excited. But that's where this established trust, and that was one of the other insights, Greg. We do a lot of blood drives on the north side. We're at St. Marcus Lutheran School, right? We're at all these different places. But some of the insight we received is you need to be here to stay because we've seen this before. We've seen people come and go. And so it was a no-brainer when I spoke with the Thrive On team, our internal team, as you know, Greg, our Versiti board, like a 10-year commitment. That was an easy investment. So really excited about the long-term investment that this is here to stay well beyond any of us.
That's great to hear. Obviously, when you were talking about from an engagement standpoint, community was impacted deeply by the pandemic and COVID-19. You maybe share just a little bit of background about how the work that you have been doing was impacted by COVID.
Yeah, so like everything else, you have labor issues, you have supply chain disruption. So that's not unique here at Versiti. That's made it harder to operate. The biggest challenge has been, well, I talked about blood drives. We go to schools, we go to employer campuses, places of worship. And in 2020, all of that shut down, as we all know. People now have come back to more of a hybrid role. And in some cases, places have been kind of wide open, so to speak. But access for someone collecting blood has made it harder. And so inventory levels nationally, in terms of blood supply on shelves, it sometimes are at critical levels. As we got out of the holiday season, people are busy over the holidays. Weather hits. And again, you don't have as much access to high schools and things like that. And that's where it's been harder and harder. Staffing, specifically in Wisconsin, make it really challenging. And that's why we have plenty of career opportunities for folks that are interested in that. But those are some of the things that have made it really hard to collect blood and really engage donors to come in. But that's probably the most significant impact that this pandemic has brought to us. At the same time, we have seen new sponsors that have come up because they've wanted to have more of an outreach. Pandemic's a little bit of a wake-up call on what some of the communities really need, especially as maybe an employer has seen folks have more procedures and less access to healthcare because there are just less healthcare workers working in a hospital right now. Supply chain, there's less blood out there. So that part has been the silver lining that some folks have been introduced to blood donation. And if you all remember, before there was a vaccine, there was COVID convalescent plasma that was being used to treat patients that were in hospitals. We were one of those providers to all of the hospitals in Milwaukee as well.
That's just a lot there. And I don't know if I can unpack it all, but let me see if I can tie it to the community health workers that you talked about. Are there ways for listeners and participants here today to maybe learn more about the community health workers and potentially partner with them to carry out the mission that Versiti has, particularly as it relates to Project Dream and Thrive On, but also in supporting Versiti in other ways?
Yeah, similar to the call to action to folks, if there are any anyone with expertise or interest, please contact me. This is something I described this entire initiative as we're flying the plane as we're building it, right? And the community health worker model, while it exists in many other places, this is something that's relatively new in the healthcare system in the big scheme of things, right? And there really hasn't been one specific to the sickle cell patient, which we think we're going to have probably a disproportionate amount of folks that are going to be leveraging this resource for that disease state. And so folks that have ideas on how best to message this, how to reach those patients, where we should be in terms of those anchor organizations, would love the audience and would love any of those ideas to come to me directly, and would love to partner if there's an opportunity there.
So we're going to open it up in just a moment for audience Q&A. But before we do that, maybe just share one nugget that we haven't heard about, anything that you think would give the listener just a little bit more context, because we have some really discerning people who participate in this, and people often say they want to partner with community, but this is a very discerning group. Just maybe share just one more thing that would demonstrate the commitment that I have in Versiti, and the commitment that that the collaboration has in Versiti. But these are some people that are new to it. Just share maybe one thing, and I know that's a tough one, that's going to show and begin to help them have even more confidence in what you have articulated today, Brian.
The one thing that is probably the spark we need to ignite this movement, that is absolutely a critical success factor, is that when you walk into Thrive On and you come into our Versiti space, it's going to be people from that community that are working there. Like, that's how this whole thing starts. We want our community health worker, our supervisor or leader that's in the area, that office is there, from that area. We want the phlebotomists to be from that area. And so, the one nugget that I will give you is that, we talk about our Versiti way of serving, and it's an industry best, a little plug for Versiti in my organization, but it's an industry best customer service platform. And for that to be delivered by someone and you're familiar with, whether you're there to donate blood, whether you're there for an education session, to apply for a job, that's what's going to make this thing different and special. And I will tell you, no one's doing this. And that's why I think so many people are watching, because that's as grassroots as it gets. And to be able to think of the lives we're impacting in our own neighborhood by ourselves is the part that gets me the most excited about it.
Great, that's great. So we're going to open up for Q&A. Dr. Young, do you want to kind of kick us off and see if we have questions?
Sure. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Brian. What an outstanding conversation that you all have had. And I really appreciate the discussion around Thrive On and the commitment that you've made to the community. So thanks for asking that question, Greg and Brian, for clearly outlining the commitment, the 10-year commitment that you all have made. So I think that's phenomenal work. I certainly welcome any questions or comments that individuals have in the chat. I'll take a look here. It looks like there's some individuals making just some professional connections as well. So that's outstanding. It's always good to see in the spotlight when people recognize each other in the room and want to connect. Any questions that people have, either you can put in the chat or feel free to come off of mute as well. There's one question that just came in. I'm wondering if there's a coalition in Milwaukee focused on sickle cell disease that you're engaged with.
So it's quite shocking when I learned more about the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America, which have chapters all over the country, that Milwaukee doesn't have one. I don't know who had asked that. I'm trying to go back and forth between the chat box, but you may have been reading ahead and got a hold of our future plans. We think that this can be a springboard. So I'll give you an example. We would host sickle cell disease support groups, many patient groups, and a member of our community advisory board heads up one with one of the local health systems as well. This would be a place outside of Zoom that they can go and see live faces and do these types of things. The work we do in our clinics and with the health systems between Frater, Children, MCW, the public health arm of MCW that will be officing be our neighbors. Like, there is an immediate opportunity there, and that can only, bolster our chances of establishing what was just described there.
Great question.
There was also a comment in the chat from Ingrid Rivera at Milwaukee AHEC saying, would like to connect. I work with Milwaukee AHEC and we train community health workers, would like to talk and see how we can partner and support the initiative. So.
Yep, I'm taking that note, and I'm shamelessly in the background trying to ask Kelsey to capture everyone's information.
Yes.
Yes,
we will take all the help, that's for sure.
Stacy and Dr. Young, I know that you don't have a shy group here, so any other questions from members of the audience? It looks like one in the chat.
From Dr. Meltzer Lang, the other group of city stakeholders who receive blood are the trauma victims. Have you any work with them?
The victims themselves, not especially. I would describe it as several mission moments that we have are spotlighted. In fact, I don't know if we wanted to close because we didn't get to the video. I didn't quite cue that up. We jumped in right away.
Oh.
But, some folks that have suffered through, whether it's trauma, maybe they were a sickle cell patient, cancer patient, they typically come to us and say, this changed my life, want to be more active, right? We don't have a direct line to any of these trauma support groups or anything like that, but definitely sickle cell cancer patients, and just a number of different mission moments, and maybe that'd be something we can close with as we get to the last handful of questions to go to Elodie's story.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'll just note this last question, and then happily we can close out with the video. Thanks, Brian. Any last words of wisdom for academic researchers who want to be community engaged, how to start, what or what not to do?
Oh, so many different things that would be, function agnostic, right? There are things as easy as donate blood. Shameless self-promotion there. We'd love for any of you to show up at our blood drives in our donor center. In fact, that is an intentional call to action. We'll have information here at the end to share with you. But one piece that I've partnered with before is the work done to shine a light on these healthcare disparities that give data to decision makers to take action, any involvement you can get in a public health study. So I'll give you a perfect example. I know I've been working with Greg and others around shining a light on the disparity for sickle cell disease, both the inequities and disparities. There isn't a lot of data out there. It's really hard to find. Like that zip code data that I shared with you, we had to do that on our own. It was really hard. We have access to some data, but there's no national data that says that. So those types, that expertise that researchers might have, and accessibility to some of those resources could be a way of doing these things. And again, would love a conversation in more detail around that.
That sounds great. So we're going to close out with the video. Before we do that, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope that you found this conversation to be informative, and also is showing that what Versiti and others are doing with the Thrive on Collaboration is community engaged. Look out for information for the February Spotlight coming up soon, and think of ways to contribute either through reaching into Stacy or myself or Brian or others. But just thank you all for being here, and we'll close it out with our video.
Thank you, everyone.
My friend and I have a saying, and it is, after bitterness comes sweetness. And what that means to me is that through all the challenges and the difficulties we all go through, at the end of it, we will find joy and happiness. When I was younger, it was in the 90s in Central Africa, and there was not much to offer to me as a sickle cell patient to feel better except for IV and pain medication. So I was in and out of the hospital. I had a lot of sleepless nights. My parents were always by my side. But when I was sick, it was the most challenging times in our lives. At the age of 10, I moved to the United States, and by 14, I settled into the Milwaukee area. While I was still struggling with my day-to-day and my pain crises and being hospitalized at least once a month, the care that I received in the US was already better than what I had received in the past. During college, I was taking a medication called hydroxyurea, which really allowed me to go to school, get my degrees, travel abroad, and come home and graduate. I even received my master's, and after my master's degree, I had a stroke that basically rendered me blind. And that was a very scary, challenging, fearful moment. After the stroke, I began my chronic blood exchange transfusions as a treatment. I was receiving about 8 units of blood every month. That's when I learned that a sickle cell patient can need up to 10 to 20 people to donate every month to support their treatment needs. From there, that's how I became an advocate for blood donation, and I was introduced to Versiti. And from there, I landed my dream job, and I'm now on the community outreach team and advocating for this wonderful cause and mission that I get to be a part of.
.org website, and we'll have a lot of this information on there.
Working at Versiti has been very exciting. Versiti's mission is both a professional mission for me, but it's also a personal mission. I get to be out in the community and bring awareness to the work that we do, encourage people to donate blood, talk about sickle cell disease, and educate the people who really get affected by this disease. I found that I'm not the only person who's just as passionate about their job here at Versiti. I have been very lucky to have coworkers and colleagues that share my enthusiasm for the work that we do. And I personally believe that every single person in this organization across all of our 5 states had a hand in saving my life, because every job is in place to ensure the safety of the blood units that I receive in the clinics. From the blood collection teams who greet our donors every day and collect those blood units, to our transportation teams who transport the blood across the states to our hospitals, to our labs who test our specialty units every day, and of course to the nurses who take care of me while I receive these blood transfusions monthly. I also want to thank the community outreach team that I'm part of, our leaders for making the decision to commit to this mission and reaching out to blood donors and support sickle cell disease. I am so grateful for our commitment and our investment. I have gone through a bone marrow transplant, and I can happily say that I don't have sickle cell disease anymore, and you all were part of that. So thank you. So, as I look to the future, I am confident in the commitment that Versiti has made in finding new ways to engage the communities that we serve, because I truly believe that together we're stronger.